Previously, on the sword of Allah, soft pause, faint wind, distant echo of church bells fading. The people of Syria had seen the difference between rulers who took and those who gave back. Khalid ibn al-Walid's fairness had turned enemies into allies, while the Byzantine greed had sown doubt among their own. But even the most just commander must one day face the storm. From Homs to Aleppo, news came of an empire awakening. The Romans were gathering vast, disciplined, and relentless. Now Khalid and Abu Ubaidah stand before an impossible choice: to fight and be crushed, or retreat and survive. Soft music rises, calm, drum, or desert flute tonight. We drift into that quiet moment between courage and fear. The calm before Yarmouk. The strategic withdrawal to Yarmouk. Faced with this immense, slow-moving tide, Khalid and Abu Ubaidah made the only sound military decision: retreat. Abu Ubaidah issued the order for the immediate withdrawal from the newly secured cities of Homs and Aleppo. This was perhaps the most crucial political move of the entire campaign. Before leaving, the Muslim army gathered the jizya that the citizens had paid for their protection. They did not simply keep it. They went to the Christian and Jewish leaders and announced, "The emperor's army is here, and they are too numerous for us to hold this city. We must retreat, because we cannot uphold the terms of our covenant of protection at this time. We are returning all the tax money you have paid. If God grants us victory, we will return. If not, you are free to return to the Byzantine rule." This act of profound integrity, returning the protection tax, because they could not guarantee that protection, sent shockwaves of loyalty through the local populace. The citizens of Homs, seeing their money returned and recognizing the immense moral difference between their old masters and their new ones, wept. Many pleaded with the Muslims to stay, and others actively volunteered to fight alongside them, believing that the Arabs' just cause would prevail. The armies withdrew rapidly, pulling back from central Syria through Damascus and south to a strategically chosen location: the barren, rugged terrain along the Yarmouk River, near the borders of the modern-day Golan Heights, Jordan and Syria. By choosing this desolate plateau, Khalid achieved several vital goals. Concentration. He unified the smaller, fragmented Muslim forces into a single, cohesive army under his complete operational command. Terrain advantage. He lured the massive Byzantine host away from the cities and into rough, arid territory, where their superior numbers and heavy armor would become a logistical burden, and their cavalry would be hampered. Rear security. The desert was now at his back, eliminating the threat of a flanking attack and allowing him to control the one vital escape route should the worst happen. The two great armies of the world were now hurtling toward collision on the vast, dust-choked plain of the Yarmouk. The war for Syria was about to culminate in the war for survival. The concentration at Yarmouk, a world on the brink, the geography of destiny. The Yarmouk River is not a river of gentle beauty. It is a landscape of violence. The chosen battlefield was a high, undulating plateau situated south of the river, marked by two massive, impassable ravines: Wadi al-Walid to the east and the deep, sheer gorge of the Yarmouk itself to the west and south. This desolate, waterless triangle was strategically perfect for a smaller army. By retreating here, Khalid had achieved the near impossible. He had concentrated his fragmented forces while stripping the enormous Byzantine army of its natural advantages. The terrain was rugged, making the heavy Roman cavalry and the slow, chained infantry formations clumsy. The searing August heat and the difficulty of logistics in the empty territory began to work against the massive Byzantine host the moment they arrived. The psychological atmosphere was heavy. Every man in the Muslim camp knew this was not a skirmish for a city or a siege for a fortress. This was the final, irreversible moment. The stakes were absolute. Victory meant the Levant belonged to the Caliphate. Defeat meant total annihilation and the effective end of the nascent Islamic State. A world hung on the brink, balanced precariously on this dusty, unforgiving plateau. The assembly of the believers, the primary objective of the strategic withdrawal, was achieved with near-perfect timing. The 4 separate Muslim armies, the original forces led by Abu Ubaidah, Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan, Amr ibn Alas, and Shurabil ibn Hassanakan, verged with Khalid's returning mobile guard. They stood together now, a unified force of perhaps 30,000 to 40,000 men. They were the greatest fighting force the Caliphate possessed, but they were still outnumbered by a factor of at least 3 to 1 by the immense Byzantine array. The arrival of the main Byzantine army, led by the astute General Vahan, was a terrifying confirmation of the intelligence. The Roman host stretched across the northern plain, a magnificent, dreadful, moving wall of polished steel. The sun reflected off thousands of helmets and shields, and the distant sound of their marching and the roar of their commands were like the relentless drumming of fate. The presence of the al-Silsala, the chained men, was confirmed a massive, fixed line of infantry designed to deny the Muslims the one thing they relied on: fluidity. Doubt was a natural, human poison, and it began to spread through the Muslim ranks. Shurabil, a pious and respected commander, watched the endless stream of Byzantine banners. "Oh, Khalid," he asked one evening, his voice heavy with the numerical truth, "how can we, in our small numbers, stand against the sheer might of Rome? Their host is like a mountain." Khalid, always pragmatic, never theatrical, responded, "O Shurabil, how often do you trust in God, yet count the enemy's legs? It is not by the quantity of men that a battle is won, but by the conviction in their hearts. We are fighting to establish a new order of justice. They are fighting to protect an old order of oppression. God is with the just." The crisis of command and the act of humility before the battle could begin. A profound crisis of command had to be resolved. The Caliph Abu Bakr, in his official capacity, had placed Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah in charge of the entire Syrian campaign. Abu Ubaidah was a man of impeccable piety, profound humility, and moral excellence, the Amin Aluma trustee of the nation. He was beloved by the troops and commanded absolute moral authority. Yet he lacked Khalid's singular, instinctual, tactical genius. He was a great leader of men, but Khalid was a flawless commander of armies. In the face of Vahan's massive, sophisticated, and technologically superior force, the army needed the sword of God. In a moment that would become legendary for its humility and commitment to the greater good, Abu Ubaidah called the council of commanders together, including the recently arrived reinforcements who brought with them the news of the caliph's growing concern. Abu Ubaidah stood before the men, holding the decree of command, and spoke with solemn sincerity. "O men of the caliphate, we face the greatest host we have ever known. This battle is for the survival of the faith. Though the Caliph placed the seal of command upon me, I know my strengths and I know the necessity of the moment. We need a general whose command is swift, whose strategy is brilliant, and whose name alone causes doubt in the enemy." He looked directly at Khalid, the fierce, uncompromising general. "O Khalid, I delegate the full authority of the battlefield to you. You are the commander of the army in the field. Your word is absolute. I do this not out of weakness, but out of submission to the ultimate truth of the situation, which demands the greatest possible chance of victory. Your genius is God's gift to this army." This was not resignation, it was strategic delegation. For Khalid, the moment was transformative. It was the complete acceptance and justification of his unique, controversial role. He was not merely a brilliant rogue. He was the necessary instrument of the caliphate, accepted and affirmed by its most pious leader. He accepted the charge with characteristic directness, his voice resonating with absolute command. "I accept this trust, O Abu Ubaidah. May God grant us victory for the sake of His word and your great heart. The army will be reorganized instantly. We fight tomorrow for our lives." Khalid's blueprint, reorganization for fluidity. Khalid immediately initiated a massive, instantaneous overhaul of the entire army's structure. He recognized that the existing structure, 4 large, separate armies, was too unwieldy to respond to the fluidity required to defeat the Byzantine juggernaut. His innovation was radical: fragmentation for flexibility. From armies to battalions, he abolished the 4 massive commands and restructured the entire force into approximately 36 smaller, autonomous battalions. Each battalion consisted of around 1,000 men and was commanded by a seasoned veteran of the Ridda Wars. This allowed for lightning-fast communication and maneuverability. If one battalion broke, the entire line would not collapse. The battalion next to it could instantly swing to plug the gap. The Women's Reserve. Crucially, he established the Women's Corps at the rear of each division. These women, including the fearsome Khala bint al-Azwar and the wives of the generals, were armed and equipped not as primary fighters, but as the final, desperate reserve, and, most importantly, as a moral barrier. Their instructions were clear. Any soldier attempting to flee the battlefield was to be physically stopped, shamed, or, if necessary, attacked. The shame of being driven back into the fight by a woman was often more terrifying than the Byzantine army itself, instilling a ruthless, no-retreat commitment. The flanking cavalry mobile guard, the mobile guard or talia, was redefined. It was no longer a fixed wing. It was a large, powerful, strategic reserve cavalry under Khalid's personal command. The unit was kept behind the main Muslim line, ready to be dispatched instantly to any point of weakness in the Muslim line, or more crucially, any point of opportunity in the Byzantine line. This unit was Khalid's hammer, and it would decide the battle. Khalid ensured that the army was positioned with the deep ravines, protecting their flanks. Their only vulnerable point was the wide open center, but there, the sheer drop of the ravines meant the Byzantines could not use their numbers to completely surround the Arabs. The battlefield was a trap, and Khalid was the bait. The dance of delay, knowing that time was his enemy, Vahan, the Byzantine commander, began to use the days before the battle to engage in long, drawn-out negotiations. Heraclius had ordered Vahan to attempt a diplomatic resolution first, hoping to bribe the Arab forces to withdraw and return to their deserts. Khalid, however, understood that Vahan's primary goal was to stall and demoralize the smaller Muslim army with the sight of his immense host. Khalid decided to use the negotiations for his own benefit. For several days, emissaries rode between the camps. Vahan offered Khalid and his men vast sums of gold, land, and provisions if they would simply leave Syria. Khalid listened patiently, knowing that every day of delay placed greater strain on the massive, logistically fragile Byzantine supply lines. The August sun beat down relentlessly. The massive army consumed colossal amounts of food and water, which had to be brought from afar. The smaller, desert-hardened Muslim force, while uncomfortable, was far more resilient to the deprivation. The Muslim response to the offers was consistent and unwavering. Surrender to the truth of God and be safe. Pay the jizya and be protected, or fight and be judged. During one such exchange, a Byzantine general, dressed in the gleaming splendor of imperial Rome, looked at Khalid's worn desert gear and the lean austerity of his camp. "You are hungry men," the general said dismissively. "We will give you enough gold to satisfy your hunger for years. Go home." Khalid's response was cold and immediate. "We came for more than gold. We came for what is right. We are a people who love death as much as you love life." The negotiations ultimately failed, but they served Khalid's purpose. He gained valuable days for his troops to rest, for his scouts to map every contour of the battlefield, and for the internal unity of the Muslim command to solidify. The eve of reckoning, on the final night, with the talks broken and battle certain for the morrow, a spiritual transformation swept through the Muslim camp. The terror of the sheer numbers was replaced by a quiet, fierce dedication to their purpose. Lanterns flickered across the plateau as the final preparations were made. Soldiers sharpened their swords, recited the Quran, and said their final prayers. Sermons were delivered throughout the night, reminding the men that their fight was not about the transient glory of empire, but about fulfilling the covenant of justice. The imams spoke of the sanctity of the women and children they had left behind, the justice they had promised the people of Homs and Damascus, and the immense permanent value of the Akhiratha life hereafter of the current, fleeting moment. In the center of the camp, Khalid addressed his assembled officers one last time. "Tomorrow we fight an enemy that believes numbers and steel are enough. We will show them that these things are worthless against discipline, courage, and faith. When the attack comes, hold your line. Do not seek easy glory, seek obedience. Move only when I command. If you see your comrade fall, move into his space. The ranks must be seamless. This day will decide the fate of this new world. We fight not merely for victory, but for survival itself. Be patient, be firm, and trust the guidance of God." As dawn broke over the barren hills of the Yarmouk, casting long, stark shadows across the plain, the Muslim army stood ready. They had concentrated their power, resolved their command structure, and prepared their minds. They had lured the great Byzantine host onto the field of their choosing. The stage was set for one of the most defining battles in history. The sheer weight of the Byzantine Empire, anchored by the unyielding iron chain, was poised to crush the fragile, mobile strength of the Caliphate. The world was holding its breath. The night before, Yarmouk was not filled with fear, but with peace. Prayers whispered through the camp, swords rested in silence, and hearts steadied in faith. As you drift into sleep tonight, remember, even in retreat, greatness often begins with calm. Soft pause, gentle music fades in. If this story helped you find calm tonight, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, so more dreamers can drift into history. With us. Soft outro whisper. This is boring bedtime. Drift into calm.